Warning, this story contains extreme violence, slasher elements, and murder. I encourage you to listen to the entire story, and if you enjoy this type of content, please subscribe and press the bell icon to stay updated. I wake up drenched in sweat, the faint stench of rotting flesh seeping into my nostrils. The air is thick, humid, tainted with decay. My heart pounds in my chest, my breath shaky. It's been days since the world ended, weeks, maybe. Time lost all meaning the moment they crawled out of their graves. The first night it happened, I was home, watching some mindless TV show, trying to escape the reality of the world collapsing around us. The news had been screaming about it for days, a virus, some bioweapon gone rogue, they said. But no one believed it could really happen. Zombies were fiction, the stuff of horror movies and old wives' tales, until the power went out. Until the first scream echoed through the night. Cutting through the silence like a knife, I bolted out of my seat, peeking through the blinds. The streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the pavement. My neighbor, Mrs. Gibson, was standing in the middle of the road, her mouth wide open in a silent scream, her eyes glazed over with an unnatural white film. Blood dripped from her hands, the dark crimson a sharp contrast against her pale skin. I didn't see what she was screaming at, not at first. Then it stepped into the light, a hulking figure, skin sloughing off its bones, eyes sunken, hollow. A ghoul, a walking corpse. My stomach churned as it lurched toward Mrs. Gibson, its jaws unhinged, teeth gnashing. She didn't even try to run. The sound of flesh tearing filled the air, a wet, grotesque noise that sent shivers down my spine. I backed away from the window, the bile rising in my throat. This couldn't be real. But it was, and by the time I forced myself to look again, she was on the ground, her entrails spilling out, her eyes lifeless, blank. I shut the blinds and bolted the door, praying it wouldn't find its way inside. But that was just the beginning. Now, I'm holed up in an old, abandoned apartment building. The groans and shuffling of the undead echo through the hallways at all hours, a constant reminder that there's no escaping this nightmare. I lost track of how many I've killed. At first, it was self-defense, pure survival instinct. But as the days dragged on, something inside me changed. The fear, the desperation, it all twisted into something darker, something primal. The first time I bashed one of their heads in with a crowbar, I was trembling, tears streaming down my face. Now, I relish it, the crunch of bone beneath my feet, the splatter of blood on my skin, it's intoxicating. I've grown numb to the smell of decay. To the sight of their mutilated bodies. I hunt them now, whenever I can, whenever the need for blood becomes too overwhelming to ignore. I've become a monster in my own right, driven by a hunger not so different from theirs. The thrill of the kill is the only thing that keeps me going, the only thing that reminds me I'm still alive, still human, at least, what's left of me. The building creaks, settling into the silence of the night. I know they're out there, wandering the streets, searching for flesh. They always are. I used to avoid them, used to hide and hope they'd pass by. But not anymore. I get up, grabbing my bat, the nails jutting out from its splintered wood, stained dark with old blood. My heart races, a familiar excitement bubbling in my chest. The door groans as I pry it open, stepping into the dimly lit hallway. The fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting long shadows that dance along the walls. I keep my footsteps light, my breaths shallow. There's one at the end of the corridor, its back to me, a slow, lumbering figure dragging one foot behind it. It's a young woman, or was, once. Her dress is torn, clinging to her emaciated frame, her hair matted with dirt and dried blood to her skull with a sickening squelch. She drops to the floor, twitching, her blood pooling around her. I stand over her, panting, my body thrumming with adrenaline. The sight of her ruined face, the blank stare of her eyes, fills me with a twisted satisfaction. I rip the bat free, chunks of her flesh still clinging to the nails, and wipe the blood from my face. There's a crackling noise behind me, a shuffle of feet. I turn, spotting another one in the shadows, drawn by the noise, its gaping mouth drooling, its eyes lifeless, hungry. I let out a low growl, something primal, guttural, and charge at it. The bat connects with its chest. Splintering bone, the impact reverberating through my arms. It staggers, but doesn't fall. I strike again, harder, sending it crashing into the wall, its ribs caving in, organs spilling out in a mess of gore. My heart pounds, my breath coming in ragged gasps, but I don't stop. I keep swinging, over and over, until there's nothing left but a broken, bloodied pile of meat. The rage in me ebbs, replaced by a cold emptiness. I step back, surveying the carnage, the thrill of the kill already fading. There will be more, there always are. But for now, I retreat to my room, the silence of the night pressing in around me, the weight of what I've become settling on my shoulders. In the dark. I wonder how much longer I can keep this up, how long before I become one of them. The thought haunts me, the line between man and monster growing ever thinner with each passing day, but that's a problem for another time. For now, I live for the hunt, the kill, the blood. I am no longer prey, I am the predator, and in this world, that's the violence and death. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, it's never restful. The screams echo in my dreams, the snarls of the undead, the crunch of bones beneath my boots, the spray of blood as I cave in skulls. But there's something else, too, something worse. I see their faces, the faces of the people they used to be. The man who ran the corner store, the kid who used to play basketball in the park, the woman who walked her dog every morning. I recognize them all. The neighborhood, once familiar, has turned into a graveyard of memories, each street corner a reminder of the life that used to be. I'm not even sure why I keep going. Why I keep killing. Is it survival? Or something darker, something I can't admit even to myself? Maybe I've already crossed that line, become the very thing I despise, but then, I find a reason. I hear it one night, a sound I haven't heard in what feels like a lifetime. A child's cry, soft, frightened, somewhere in the building. My blood runs cold. I freeze, straining to hear it again. It's faint, but unmistakable. A whimper, a sob. There's someone else here. I move quickly, silently, following the sound down the hallway, my bat gripped tightly in my hand. The building groans and shifts around me, every creak and rustle setting my nerves on edge. I pass by the bodies I've left behind. Rotting in the shadows, their lifeless eyes watching me as I go. The cry leads me to a door at the end of the corridor, half off its hinges. I push it open, slowly, and peer inside. The room is dark, the air thick with the smell of mold and decay. Broken furniture is scattered around, and in the corner, huddled beneath a filthy blanket, is a small figure, a girl, no older than 6 or 7. Her face is streaked with dirt, her hair tangled and matted, but her eyes are alive. Wide chest. Please, she whispers, her voice hoarse from crying. Don't hurt me. I lower the bat, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't ready for this. In a world where everything is either dead or undead, the sight of something living, something fragile, throws me off balance. I'm not gonna hurt you, I say, my voice rough and used to kindness. I take a step closer, and she flinches, shrinking back against the wall. It's okay. I'm not one of them. Her eyes dart to the bat in my hand, then back to my face, distrust etched into every line of her expression. She doesn't believe me, and why should she? In this world, monsters wear human faces too, but something in her eyes, some spark of hope, or maybe just desperation, makes her nod, ever so slightly. You promise? I swallow hard. This isn't what I signed up for. I'm no hero. I'm barely even human anymore. But I can't walk away from her. Not when she's looking at me like that, like I'm the only thing standing between her and the monsters in the dark. I promise, I say, my voice firm, even though my hands are shaking. I'll keep you safe. The days that follow are a blur of survival. The girl, her name's Emily, sticks close to me, her small hand clutching mine whenever we move through the building. She's quiet, too quiet, her eyes always scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. She doesn't ask questions, doesn't complain, but I can see the fear in her eyes, the exhaustion pulling at her small frame. I don't tell her about the things I've done. About the blood on my hands, the bodies I've left behind. She doesn't need to know. She still has a chance, a sliver of innocence left in this world gone mad, ahead of the dead. But the city is a labyrinth of danger, every street crawling with them. I've grown used to the sight of their twisted, rotting faces, the stench of death that clings to everything. Emily hasn't. The first time she sees one up close, she freezes, her breath hitching in her throat. It's an old man, or what's left of him, shuffling down the hallway toward us. His eyes are gone, rotted away, but he can still smell us, still sense the warmth of our living bodies. Stay behind me, I whisper, positioning myself between her and the creature. I raise the bat, the nails glinting in the dim light. The old man lets out a low, guttural moan, his jaws snapping open and closed, a string of drool hanging from his chin. I move quickly, swinging the bat with all the strength I can muster. It connects with his skull, a wet, crunching sound that makes my stomach turn. He drops to the floor, twitching, his blood pooling around him. Emily doesn't scream, doesn't cry. She just stands there, staring at the body, her face pale, her eyes wide. I can see the horror in her eyes, the realization that this is her reality now. I've seen that look before, in the mirror, every time I wash the blood from my hands. I'm sorry you had to see that, I say, but the words feel hollow, meaningless. There's no apology that can make this right. She nods, her small hands trembling as she clutches her doll tighter. It's okay, she whispers, her voice barely audible. You had to. But I see the change in her after that. The light in her eyes dims, the hope she held on to fading a little more each day. I try to keep her spirits up, to make her laugh, to remind her that there's still some good left in this world. But it's hard, when all we see is death and destruction. One night, the air is thick with the smell of rain, the dislocated with whatever we could find. Emily is asleep in the back room, curled up under a pile of blankets, her doll clutched to her chest. I'm on edge, every muscle in my body tense, waiting for something to happen. The storm outside is growing stronger, the wind howling through the cracks in the walls, the rain pounding against the roof. I can feel the pressure building, like the air itself is alive, thick with danger, and then, I hear it, a low, dragging sound, somewhere outside the store. My heart skips a beat, adrenaline surging through my veins. I grab my bat, moving silently toward the door. The sound grows louder. Closer, and then I see it, a shadow moving outside, distorted by the rain. It's not just one of them. It's a whole group, a horde, drawn by the storm, by the smell of us, by the promise of flesh. I can see them through the cracks in the boards, their twisted, rotting faces pressed against the glass, their fingers clawing at the wood. I back away, my heart racing. There are too many. There's no way we can fight them all. Panic rises in my throat, threatening to choke me, but I force it down. I can't lose control, not now. Emily's depending on me. I rush to the back room, shaking her awake. Emily, we have to go, I whisper, my voice urgent, but she's groggy, confused, her eyes blinking up at me in the dim light. What's happening? She murmurs, rubbing her eyes. I grab her hand, pulling her to her feet. There's no time to explain. We have to get out of here, now. But it's too late. The door to the store shudders, the wood splintering under the force of the horde outside. I can hear their guttural moans, their fingernails scraping against the walls, the glass shattering as they break through. Emily clings to me, her small body trembling. I can feel her fear, her terror, and it only fuels my own. There's no way out, flooding the store, their eyes wild, hungry. I swing the bat, taking out the first one that comes too close, but it's like trying to hold back a tidal wave. For every one I take down, 3 more take its place. Run! I shout, pushing Emily toward the back exit. She hesitates, her eyes wide with fear, but I shove her again, harder this time. Go! I'll hold them off. She stumbles toward the door, and for a moment, I think she's going to make it. But then, one of them grabs her by the arm, its decayed fingers digging into her flesh. She screams, a high-pitched wail that cuts through the chaos like a knife. Emily! I roar, swinging the bat with everything I have. The nails tear through the creature's face, ripping it apart, but another one is already reaching for her, its jaws snapping inches from her throat. I'm there in an instant, smashing its head in with a sickening crunch. Blood and brains splatter across the floor, the stench overwhelming, but I don't stop. I can't stop. I yank Emily free, pushing her behind me, forming a barrier between her and the horde. They're closing in, the sheer number of them suffocating. I swing the bat wildly, every strike driven by desperation, by the primal need to protect. The sound of cracking skulls, the wet thud of bodies hitting the floor, it all blends together in a gruesome symphony of violence. But it's not enough. There are too many of them, their hands clawing at my clothes, their teeth gnashing inches from my skin. I can feel their hot, fetid breath on my neck, the weight of their bodies pressing in on me from all sides, and then, one of them gets a hold of me. Its teeth sink into my shoulder, a searing pain shooting through my body. I scream, the bat slipping from my grasp as I fall to the ground, the undead swarming over me like a pack of wild animals. I can feel them tearing at me, ripping at my flesh, the warm, sticky sensation of blood soaking through my clothes. But even as I'm being torn apart, something inside me refuses to give up. I reach out, blindly, my fingers closing around the cold, hard metal of the bat. With a guttural roar, I swing it upward, smashing it into the face of the creature gnawing on my shoulder. I fight with everything I have, every ounce of strength left in me. The world narrows to the swing of the bat, the thud of metal against bone, the desperate need to keep Emily safe. I can't let her see this, can't let her die like this, but my vision is blurring, the pain unbearable. I can feel the strength draining from my body, the edges of my consciousness fraying. This is it. The end. But I can't leave her alone. I can't, Emily, I gasp, blood filling my mouth. Run. Just outrun. She doesn't listen. Instead, she grabs the knife from my belt, the one I'd shown her how to use in case things went south, and starts stabbing at the closest zombie, her small hands trembling but determined. Leave him alone. She screams, tears streaming down her face. Get away from him. The sight of her, so small, so brave, ignites something in me, a last burst of adrenaline. With a roar, I shove the creatures off me, forcing myself to my feet, the bat swinging wildly. I don't feel the pain anymore. Don't feel anything except the overwhelming need to protect her. I clear a path to the back door, the bat a blur of motion, smashing skulls, breaking bones. Emily stays close, slashing at anything that gets too near. Together, we make it to the door, stumbling out into the alley, the rain pouring down in sheets. The cold air hits me like a slap to the face, the pain flooding back in full force. My shoulder is a mangled mess, blood pouring from the wound, my vision swimming. But I can't stop, can't rest. The rain is relentless, turning the alley into a river of filth, but it also masks our scent, the sound of the storm drowning out our footsteps. I don't know how far we run, or how long. The world is a blur of darkness and rain, the only thing grounding me the small hand clutching mine. My head is spinning, my body barely holding together, but I push on, driven by pure instinct, by the need to keep her safe. Finally, we find shelter in an old, abandoned warehouse, the roof half collapsed, but the walls still standing. I kick open the door, stumbling inside, dragging Emily with me. We collapse onto the cold, damp floor. Both of us gasping for breath. For a moment, all I can hear is the pounding of my heart, the rush of blood in my ears. The pain is overwhelming, the bite on my shoulder throbbing with every beat of my heart. I know what's coming. I've seen it happen 100 times before. Emily is watching me, her eyes wide with fear. She knows too. She's seen the bite, seen the blood. She's seen what happens next. I'm sorry, I whisper, my voice barely audible. The words are thick in my mouth, and I taste the metallic tang of blood as I speak. The infection is spreading fast, the heat of fever already licking at the edges of my consciousness. I can feel it, burning through my veins like wildfire. Emily's face crumples, her bottom lip trembling. No, you're not gonna die, you can't. But the words trail off, lost in the raw reality that hangs between us. She's too young to understand the full weight of it, but she knows enough. She's seen what happens when people get bit. The change. The agony. I need you to listen to me, I say, forcing my voice to stay steady. Every word feels like dragging a blade across my throat. I'm not gonna last much longer. You need to be ready. You know what you have to do, right? Her eyes well up with tears, her hands clenching into tight fists. No control. Dark spots dance across my vision, and the cold sweat that slicks my skin tells me I don't have long. I fight to stay present, to stay human for just a little while longer. For her. You have to do it. When the time comes, don't hesitate. She's sobbing now, silent tears streaming down her dirt-streaked cheeks. I reach out, my hand trembling as I brush a stray lock of hair from her face. It's okay, Emily. It's gonna be okay. But it's a lie. We both know that. There's no okay, no happy ending here. Just blood and death, the gnawing hunger that will consume me if she doesn't act fast enough. I collapse against the wall, the room spinning wildly around me. The fever is like a burning brand, scorching me from the inside out. My vision blurs, the darkness creeping in at the edges, threatening to swallow me whole. Emily, I rasp, my voice barely more than a croak. Take the knife. Keep it close. My words are slurred, barely making sense, but I see the moment she understands. The horror in her eyes. The determination. She grips the knife, her knuckles white, her entire body trembling. I can see the war raging inside her, the child desperate for the man she's come to rely on, and the survivor who knows what must be done. The pain intensifies, like 1,000 needles stabbing into my brain. I bite down on the inside of my cheek, trying to stay in control, but it's slipping away, the darkness closing in. I feel it taking over, the primal hunger, the mindless rage. Now, I manage to choke out, the word almost lost in a guttural growl. My vision tunnels, black spots dancing in front of my eyes. I can feel my mind fracturing, the infection ripping through what's left of my humanity. Emily's breathing is ragged, the knife trembling in her hand. I can see the horror on her face, the tears that blur her vision. But there's something stronger than I ever was. My body jerks uncontrollably, muscles spasming as the infection reaches its peak. I'm losing control, the hunger overtaking everything, the last shreds of my consciousness slipping away. My vision tunnels, the world narrowing down to a single, bloody thought, do it. The words are a snarl, more animal than human. I'm not even sure if I said it or if it was the thing inside me taking over. And then there's a flash of pain, sharp and hot, slicing through the fevered haze. Emily's hand is steady as she drives the knife into my chest, right where I showed her. She twists the blade, and for a moment, there's nothing but blinding white agony, but then, the pain fades. The darkness swallows me whole.